Senator Leahy, thank you very much for having us.
Happy to.
Why did you condition U.S. aid to SCAF's compliance to democratic transition in Egypt?
Well, I've done this on aid to a lot of countries. I said just because it's American taxpayers who are sending the money, and we want to demonstrate we do it with general sense of American principles on democracy. I don't expect every country to be the same by any means, but I expect that they're going to have American aid, that they're going to respect the rights and the human rights and civil rights of their own people. Otherwise, there's no way America can justify sending money.
But what's your take on the charges against the 43 workers in NGOs, combining Americans and Europeans and Egyptians as well?
Everything I've heard about them, everything I've been able to read, everything I've been able to find is that they weren't doing anything at all illegal. They were doing what they've always said right out front they were doing, is promoting democracy. Remember, after President Mubarak was overthrown, the military and everybody else said, we want to have democracy in this country. They're doing what the current leaders in Egypt said they want to do. Now, just as we have a lot of voices in the United States, we don't stifle the voices that are different than whichever party might have the presidency or the control of the Congress. We allow all the voices, and we end up being a stronger country as a result of that.
But the charges are claiming that they were practicing illegally because they don't have permission from the government.
They didn't register. Well, I'm told by a lot of them they've been trying for years to register, and they keep being put off. Well, later, we'll do it later and all that. For years they've been operating. Everybody knew they were operating. Nobody found any fault with it. And then suddenly have this crackdown. Nobody can understand it. I've talked with people not only in Egypt but throughout the region. Nobody can understand what's happening.
General Martin Dempsey said after his recent visit to Egypt that cutting U.S. aid to Egypt would damage the relations, especially when it comes to the alliance and the strategic partnership. How the United States is planning to strike this delicate balance?
Well, I think we've done the right thing. We said, look, the aid is there. It's ready to go. But you're going to have to at least comply with basic ideas of openness and democracy, something that they'd already agreed to before the aid was gone. I think the American people are not going to support aid to Egypt or any other country unwilling to do that. Now, I've spent enough time in Egypt. I don't pretend to be an expert there, but I know what wonderful people there are in Egypt. And we're doing this to protect the people of Egypt, not to protect a particular political leader or military leader, but to do the kinds of things the people themselves in Egypt said they wanted when they demonstrated and had the overthrow of President Mubarak. What I'm not trying to tell Egypt, this is exactly the kind of government you have to have, but what I am saying is you ought to at least be open in your laws, and you ought to be open in your dealings, and you cannot step on the human rights of your own people.
President of the Muslim Brotherhood, Dr. Mohamed Morsi, said if the United States would cut the aid, then Egypt would reconsider Camp David Accords, since the aid was an integral part of that treaty. How would that impact the U.S.-Egyptian relations?
You know, I remember at the time the Camp David Accords were written, I talked with then President Sadat, and I talked with Prime Minister Begin. They signed those accords not for the aid. They signed it because they felt it was in the best interest of both countries. And it's worked well for both countries. They've been at peace with each other. They've cooperated in a lot of things, some public, some private. It's been to their best interest. It was never contingent on the aid. Now, when a country enters into an agreement, you expect that country to keep its word. And the agreement was between Egypt and Israel. I'd expect both countries to keep their word. Certainly, the United States has an interest in helping Egypt. We have spent tens of billions of dollars to help Egypt. I mean, name a country that has done more to help Egypt than the United States. It's hard to think of one.
However, Egyptian officials have been launching an anti-American campaign accusing the United States and its NGO workers of trying to subvert Egypt and even divide Egypt into 4 parts, as the news media are spreading over there. Now, what's your message to the Egyptian people regarding this kind of anti-American sentiment?
Well, you know, none of these Egyptian officials have called me or come to see me, and of course we're dealing with my legislation, so I wonder if they really care about working this out. But I would tell the Egyptian people, Americans have always been supportive of the Egyptian people. We were supportive of them when they decided to change and push for more democracy. What I'm doing is to support the with American aid to support the Egyptian people. But some want to support just a tiny, tiny group, those who have a special part in society, maybe to support their power. I'm in favor of giving the voice to the Egyptian people. And I think I reflect most Americans in that. Americans feel very favorable toward Egypt. We do not feel favorable to some in the military who are willing to actually break the law and hold people on baseless charges.
So what do you say to SCAF with that mention? You're mentioning that some in the military are not behaving in a democratic way. What do you say to them as the American dream of having Egypt leading democracy in the Middle East?
Well, you know what I'd say to them? Remember how the whole world, as well as the Egyptian people, were very supportive of the military at the time of the overthrow, because unlike the police, the military stepped in, restored order, and protected people, and they were seen widely as doing that. Why they have suddenly changed and are no longer protecting the people, that is very worrisome. I would say, for the sake of their own country, go back to protecting your people. Go back to a rule of law.
Final question. What's your vision of U.S.-Egyptian relations in post-revolution Egypt that's influenced by public opinion compared to 30 years of relying on one man to keep that kind of relationship? That's more.
Well, you know, I don't expect Egypt to be just speaking with just one voice. I think you're going to have voices from the right to the left heard in Egypt, and that actually be better for Egypt. But I'm a great fan of Egypt. In my home, I have items from Egypt. I have items on my desk that I've had from Egypt. I have some of the photographs, some of my favorite photographs I've taken have been in Egypt. I've enjoyed talking with Egyptian people, from somebody who's a storekeeper to somebody herding animals to people in the government. And I have a great deal of respect for Egypt, its history, its antiquity, but also its potential in the modern world, its ability to be a stabilizing factor in the Middle East. I want to see Egypt back there. I think it can be, and I would just again urge those who seem concerned or frightened about how things are changing, go back to the promises made at the time of the overthrow. Fulfill the promises. Doesn't mean everybody's going to have all the privileges they might have had before, but you're going to have Egyptian people with a far better life than they now have, where there's going to be more opportunity for everybody, not just a favored few.
But you're not worried about the future of the strategic cooperation with Egypt?
Well, I always worry about the future with all countries that we have relations with. You know, the United States is not in a position where it can say, let's go to Fortress America and just stay within our own borders and nothing that happens around the rest of the world affects us. That's not the case. Of course it does. But what I want Egypt to be, and to continue to be, a stabilizing factor in that part of the world. Other countries have. Jordan has, and others have. I want Egypt to be that way. I look at Tunisia, which has gone through major changes. Libya with obvious changes. There's going to be some rough times as they go forward, but I would hope that they would come out as stronger, more democratic nations, one where the voices of all people are heard.